Thank you very much, and Dr. Ohm, Dr. Lim. I really do appreciate the invitation to come here today and talk to you a little bit about how we do health technology assessment in Canada, and particularly at CADTH. Recognizing the fact that you're on your 5th anniversary, and it's been a journey, I'm sure, to get to the point that you are now. We are also celebrating an anniversary in 2014, our 25th anniversary of being a health technology assessment agency. So quite a long journey to get us there. About 3 weeks ago, there was another pretty important Canadian who visited South Korea, who was in Seoul, our Prime Minister. And he was here, and this was a picture taken just shortly after our Prime Minister and your President signed an historic free trade agreement between our two countries, really opening some ties, some economic ties between two vibrant, vital countries. And I don't know how much press it generated in your country, but in Canada it generated a lot of interest and a lot of press. Certainly about $10 billion, $11 billion in trade between our two countries. Significant, not fantastically significant, but I think with this free trade agreement opening up, we'll start seeing this figure grow enormously, with a lot more cars and technology coming from your country to our country, and natural resources and food products coming from Canada to Korea. By the way, throughout this presentation, I'll be using Canadian dollars a number of times, just to let you know where we sit in respect to the Korean won and the American dollar. We're about 92, 93 cents compared to the American dollar at present. Let me start you with a question. How many of you have actually been to Canada? So quite a few of you have been to Canada. To me, we're very proud of our country. It's an enormous country. Thank you, of course. 10 million square kilometers. It can take about 7 to 8 hours just to fly from one coast to the other coast in Canada. A week to drive across our wonderful country. We have beautiful scenery, from mountains to prairies to rugged coastlines. A very proud military tradition, having fought with our allies in many wars, including the Korean War. We have a very, very multicultural, diverse population. Some vibrant cities like Toronto and Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, and the city that I live in Ottawa. Very proud sporting tradition as well, particularly in the winter sports, and we're very competitive against the Koreans, of course, in many of those sports like speed skating at the Olympics. We're looking very forward to coming back to your country in 4 years' time for the Winter Olympics. And one thing that is really important to the makeup, to the value of Canadians, for whatever reason, it's our healthcare system. We have a very different system from that large neighbor to the south of us, the United States. It is one of the values, a universal healthcare system available to all Canadians. It's part of our culture. Our healthcare system, though, is a very complicated system. At the federal level, our federal government is responsible for some public health areas and for the regulation of drugs and medical devices. But the actual delivery of healthcare is a responsibility of our provinces and territories. We have 10 provinces and 3 northern territories. They all have their own individual ministries of health. They run their own hospitals and their own healthcare system. In 2013, we spent $211 billion in healthcare, on healthcare. Roughly $6,000 for every Canadian, 11.2% of our GDP. Now, in your booklets, there is one small typographical error on that slide, and I've removed it from this one. But when we did the actual calculation, I think it says 2 trillion Korean won. That's actually 211 trillion Korean won that we spend on healthcare. So let me take you back a little bit to that journey that we were on. This was an actual statement from our health minister in 1989. And I like to use this statement because it was very valid in that time. And today, the exact same thing. We do need a coordinated approach to evaluate technologies. And nowhere in this statement do you hear anything about cost cutting, being a barrier to innovation, all those sorts of things. It is about evaluating technologies so that the technologies that are available to treat patients are ones that are truly effective and cost effective. But look at us now. So over those 25 years, we've grown from 6 people, and that's what we started with, and we didn't actually do any health technology assessment in 1989. We coordinated. We now have 160 employees, $23.5 million budget. We are recognized in our own country and globally as being one of the leaders in health technology assessment. We are an independent body, a not-for-profit corporation. We are not part of the government. Arm's length from the government, arm's length from industry, arm's length from clinical groups, arm's length from patients and patient groups. Very independent in what we do. Most of our funding does come from government sources. Both our federal government and all of the provinces and territories contribute to our budget. It isn't just about CADTH, however, in Canada. Again, Canada is known, we like to say we are the founders of evidence-based medicine with Dr. Gordon Guyatt, so-called inventor of evidence-based medicine. We have people and organizations involved in doing health technology assessment at many different levels in our healthcare system, in academia, and in almost every hospital that we have in Canada. There are small hospital-based HTA units. Some of our provinces, particularly our larger provinces, have agencies that help contextualize some of the work that we do. And all of these little acronyms are various groups that are involved in some way in Canada with health technology assessment. We truly are a national or pan-Canadian health technology assessment agency. We help coordinate some of the work that all of these groups do. So let's talk about health technology assessment. And when we speak of health technologies at CADTH, we talk about 2 major portfolios. One being pharmaceuticals, drugs. And we do lots of things, lots of assessments on pharmaceuticals. And then we also have what we refer to as our non-drug health technologies, but more specifically, that is medical, dental, and surgical devices and procedures and diagnostics. So some of you and some people think, when they think of health technology assessment, that's what they think of, the technologies. Yes, it's a little bit about them, but it's about way more than the technologies. Some think it's about the reports. This was actually a picture of Young Hoon's office taken. Many of us think that it's all about the reports, and many of us feel like that sometimes when we're actually doing a health technology assessment. But it's about more than the report. Well, some think it's about the physicians, the pharmacists, the nurses, the physiotherapists, the people who use the technologies. And sure, it is about them as well, but it's about more than them. Getting closer, how about the patients? Yes, it is about the patients, but it's more than just the patients. It's also that interaction. So this is getting much closer to what health technology assessment is all about. The interaction of that technology with the patient and the clinician, and the reports, the assessments, the appraisals that we do on those technologies. But guess what? It's also about this. It's about money. It's about sustainability of our healthcare systems. How do we afford all of these new technologies? How do we afford the technologies we already use in our system? And it's about this, and Dr. Haslam referred to some of this, the politics, the media. In almost every city in the world, if you pick up the local newspaper, you'll probably find a story about either budgetary crises, cuts to our budget, healthcare issues, people who are dying because healthcare wasn't provided appropriately. So yes, it's about that as well. And we think of it in our country with those issues, with all of those other technologies and patients and clinicians, etc. And I think even in your country, in South Korea, you face significant pressures. I read a recent report that the OECD did on the quality of healthcare in South Korea. And it struck me that you're facing, although you've made tremendous advances in the delivery of healthcare over the last 3 decades, you're also now starting to face some challenges. An aging population, the need for a really strong primary healthcare system, some areas of your healthcare system that aren't as strong as others, and the cost. You're now starting to see the costs of your healthcare system go up. 8% a year since 2002, more than double the average in all other OECD countries. So there are challenges. And that is what health technology assessment in Canada, and I believe in most countries, is about. It's balancing the quality of the care we deliver, those clinical outcomes, with the cost and the sustainability of our healthcare systems. This is probably one of the most important slides that I'm going to talk about, because this really speaks to the CADTH way, how we believe we do health technology assessment. There's 2 very simple statements here. First is we are a health technology assessment agency. We are independent. We are that arm's length group that provides some unbiased information to the people that fund us. And more importantly is this second statement. There's all kinds of definitions out there for health technology assessment. HTAI has one, NATA has one, HT AsiaLink probably has a definition that they use for it. Lots of words. I don't think I could recite any of those definitions. We came up with one simple thing, and it goes right back to the roots of why health technology assessment was created some 30 or 40 years ago. It's about supporting decision making, helping either clinicians or policymakers make a decision. That is really the culture that we take in our agency. We were chatting last night, Dr. Lim, you were saying in June of this year you're going to have an audit happen of your agency. About 5 years ago, we went through that as well, a very major audit and evaluation of CADTH. And although they were still pleased with some of the things we did, they were not happy with many of the things we were doing. They felt we were so focused on the report, on the research, as opposed to the service or the need. So when I came to CADTH, and I came in just as that evaluation was being done, I felt we really needed to change our culture to be about service rather than being about the reports and the research. Yes, we still do great research. It's very credible, it's trustworthy, but we're providing a service to the policymakers. The approach we take, and we do look at the entire life cycle of a health technology. We do get involved from an innovation perspective. Some of the things we do are working with industry. We do that initial assessment and an appraisal. We don't use the word appraisal in Canada, but we understand what it means. We do use expert committees that provide the recommendations. So that initial adoption and listing or use or funding of the technology. We then continue to look at it throughout its life cycle. Is there a need to optimize its use if it's being used inappropriately? So reassessments happen, and then when we get to the point that it's now obsolete. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention horizon scanning, of course, because that's where we also are involved very heavily early on in the process at that innovation stage, and throughout the life cycle there is some horizon scanning. And I think anybody who is involved with health technology assessment, any researcher sitting here in the audience would say this is what I do as well. And we do. We follow this. We look at whether it's safe, who's it work for, any subgroups that it should be used for. Is it better than what we already have? Is it good value for money? All of these questions come out in all of the work, all of the assessments that we do. We use this type of a model, however, and again, this goes back to the service we provide. We look at it from the perspective of the customer. Who needs information? Who needs advice? Is it a policymaker? Is it a clinician? And whenever a new technology comes to market, and sometimes even when a technology has been used for a while, there is significant uncertainty. That's that red box. They have a gap in their knowledge. Our role is to try and close that information gap to the degree where that policymaker or that clinician feels comfortable in making a decision. Nothing more, nothing less. So to do that, to get to an impact from our health technology assessment, an impact on either patient outcomes or sustainability, we go through 3 distinct steps. We have to plan, we have to prioritize. In our country, there are more than 1 million licensed medical devices, more than 25,000 pharmaceuticals. We cannot do an assessment on each and every one of those products. So we need to plan, we need to prioritize. We horizon scan, we use advisory committees, we survey. Once we have a list of topics that we need to do assessments on, we then produce something, our product line, and I'll talk about that a little later. And there's another term that we've introduced over the last few years as well called brokering. All of those other groups that you saw in Canada also do some great health technology assessments. Agencies across the world do great health technology assessments. So before we jump in and do our own review, we look to see what's been done. And then we will take that report. Sometimes we need to translate it. Sometimes we need to put some knowledge translation or contextualize it for the Canadian context. But we'll broker it. We'll use that report if we feel that's what is needed by the Canadian decision makers. And you can't just produce a report and throw it out there and hope that it lands on somebody's desk and they're going to do something with it. You need to mobilize that knowledge, put it into a useful format. And this is also where we have made some great advances over the last 5 to 10 years, is in knowledge mobilization. We do have scientific oversight through our entire process, and we evaluate. And the CQI, continuous quality improvement, we're always looking for ways to do things better or faster or smarter. So the CADTH way, some distinct components to that. We do talk about serving our customers. This was a hard concept for some of our researchers to accept. They felt it was about the research. And when we do really good research, shouldn't people just take it and do something with it? Change their policies, change their practice? Wake up. It does need to be timely. It needs to be delivered basically, it has to be relevant to their policy-making needs. We also believe in advancing the science of health technology assessment. We use state-of-the-art methods. We develop some of our own. We get involved with international groups in all of the various methods of HTA. We also believe that anything we do has to have the potential to have an impact. If it doesn't, we kill the project. We no longer continue with it. And we want to promote the use of evidence in decision-making at the clinical level and at the policy level. So we attend a lot of conferences. We develop partnerships with clinical societies. We collaborate. We build capacity. We do lectures. And this is our principles for success. 4 words that my staff gets sick of me saying over and over. But this, again, is crucial to our way ahead, to the CADTH way. Relevance, timeliness, quality, and impact. From relevance, you do need to determine what the customer needs. Why do a report if they don't need it or don't feel they're going to be able to do anything with it? So this, again, is where we do our horizon scanning, where we survey our customers, we talk to physicians that are in clinical practice, and we prioritize. So the products that we produce need to be relevant to decision-making needs, and they've got to be timely. If they're not timely, they are no longer relevant. This I push for all the time. Get faster at what you do. Ensure that what you're doing meets their needs and don't go beyond their needs. So getting ahead of the technology curve, employing flexible processes and methods. Again, learning how to do things differently and adapting to the needs. We've also, to get ahead of the technology curve, we're about to introduce a scientific advice program, very similar to what NICE has. We've looked at models in Australia, in Germany, in Sweden, throughout Europe, and in the United Kingdom. And we've put our own process together. Now, why Canada? Why, we're roughly, and this is for pharmaceuticals only, We're only about 2% of the global sales in pharmaceuticals, Canada. But we have a lot of influence as well. I hear that from global leaders in the pharmaceutical industry, the recommendations that we produce. About 50% of the hits on our website come from outside of Canada. So we do know that others are looking at our recommendations. So they want a program. And this isn't to compete with NICE or any others. Typically, the leaders in the industry community are looking for information from various countries. They're looking for that information, that advice to be consistent, which makes their decisions relatively straightforward going ahead, or they're looking for it to be inconsistent. And when it's inconsistent, that's when they have a lot of challenges. They sit around their board table, and before they make a decision to spend $800 million or $1 billion on a phase 3 clinical trial, they'll look at this advice. Again, non-binding. There is no guarantee that if they follow our advice, we're going to say yes. However, if they don't follow our advice, the chances of us saying no are probably going to be greater. And we also will be charging a fee for this service, roughly $60,000 for every submission. Quality, our third key principle for success. And here it comes down to making sure that you have quality staff in everything that you do. Keep those staff trained, well-trained, continuous training, continuous education. Send them to conferences, send them to workshops, learn from each other, and learn from the international community as well. And lastly, institute a process for ensuring quality. What I did at CADTH is I appointed a chief scientist. One person who I turn to, and I count on her to ensure that the work we do is of high quality. Some of you probably know our chief scientist, Dr. Tammy Clifford. She's fantastic, a brilliant epidemiologist, and she is the one that I turn to ensure that we have quality. That's her toughest challenge, of course. Balancing that quality with the timeliness that I push for. But I keep pushing and keep pushing, as do our customers. They want this information quickly. So we do need to get better at how we do our work. Two very important things as well that we talk about at CADTH. Rigor, or taking a year or 2 years looking at every last little study and every piece of observational data, doesn't equate with quality. Quality is in the eyes of the beholder, the person that needs that information. And even when you think you have a quality product, it doesn't necessarily equate to having an impact. Two very important concepts. So what we've come up with is our own formula for impact, and that is relevance plus timeliness plus quality. If you have all of those, chances are you're going to have an impact. And we support that with good knowledge mobilization techniques, and occasionally with implementation support, helping ministry staff do academic detailing. We produce documents for them to convince either the clinicians or the policymakers or the ministerial staff on the actual project. These are the products and services that we have. We do drug formulary reviews, therapeutic class reviews, a rapid response service, lots of scans, more traditional HTA and optimal use reports. We do this coordination and brokering service, methods, guidance documents, and lots of training and education. We have two types of committees, one being an advisory type committee. These tend to be people from the various provinces in the ministry staff. Two of them on drugs, one on all drugs except for cancer drugs, and one specifically for oncology drugs. And I'm very much like David. I don't know why cancer has to stand out on its own, but it does. And we have a Canadian policy forum, again, folks from the various ministries, to help us with the non-drug technologies, the medical devices. And we have an exchange, Health Technology Assessment Exchange, which tends to be folks from academia who help us with methods. On the expert side, and this is where we do our appraisals, again, 3 expert committees, one that does all of our drugs except cancer drugs, one specifically for cancer, and one for all of the other technologies. So with our drug portfolio, And David explained very well the difference between regulation and medical devices. Why do we need an HTA assessment on drugs after regulation? We look at it as very simply what the regulator does in most countries is but they do a benefit risk appraisal, looking at safety, efficacy, and quality. They are not doing comparisons. They are not doing any economic appraisal. They are simply trying to prove the concept that the manufacturer has for their product. HTA takes it to a different level, looking at the proof of the value of that new technology. Clinical effectiveness, cost effectiveness, always in comparison with existing therapies. So we have two very prominent programs, the first being our Common Drug Review. It's been in existence for about 11 years now. And our Pan-Canadian Oncology Drug Review. It's been in place for only about 2 years. Both national processes, both very rigorous assessments. Most of those assessments we do in-house, our own research staff. We have some contractors as well that help. And we do a full clinical assessment and an economic assessment or appraisal of the model that is produced by the manufacturer. We then send those packages to our expert committees who appraise all of the evidence and come out with a listing recommendation to all of the drug plans. It is a single technology drug review process. The manufacturers are required to submit to us a full package with their clinical information as well as with their economic model. We don't accept just that, of course. Like NICE, we also have a very good information services team, librarians who search the literature, looking for gray literature, trials that might be missing in the package that comes from the manufacturer. And the final output of everything that we do is a recommendation that's issued by our expert committee. They're non-binding. Again, we're independent. We're not the decision makers, but we provide these recommendations. And roughly 94% of the time, the recommendations we make are accepted by the provinces when they make a decision. So they do follow us. Now, we are different from NICE in that we review every new drug that comes to market in Canada. Not the generics, but every new molecule. And every drug that has a new indication as well, we review them. And we also, I don't know if we're tougher or different, but our yes-no rate is about 50%. 50% of the time we say do not list this product. It provides no added benefit over existing therapies. So we also are in the limelight of our industry colleagues. So the HTA perspective is that comparative effectiveness, comparative cost and cost effectiveness, and we have input from patient groups that I'll speak to in a second here. And what comes out of all of that work is a recommendation. The patient input is an extremely important aspect of the work that we do, and we only introduced this in 2010 to our Common Drug Review. And it was added not because the patients were screaming about it, but because our experts on our appraisal committee wanted it. They wanted information from patients and patient groups. We have two public members, not representing any patient group, on our drug expert committees. And they summarize the evidence that we receive from the patient groups. And we have a very templated-based process for patient input. They go to our website, they download a document, there's some very specific questions that we're asking from them, and we want it to come from them. We're not looking for emotional pleas. We all get enough of those. We want information on unmet needs. We want information on why they believe this new drug is better than what they've been using. Lots of really important information that we're seeking from the patient groups. And our expert committees now look at that patient input as the very first thing in their assessment of any new drug. They always look at the patient input before they look at the clinical information or the safety information or the economic information. 19 drug plans in Canada. So these are our customers. These are the people that we provide those recommendations to. And their role, they still make the decisions, but they look at a whole bunch of other factors as well. Can they afford it? What's the impact on their budget? Even though they may agree with our recommendation, it may take them some time before they can actually fund that new drug. And they provide the decision. We also are quality-based, by the way. We follow a very similar model to what NICE uses in our drugs. So away from the single technology appraisal, we also do more traditional health technology assessment and optimal use products on our drugs. So we have two types of products we produce. One is our therapeutic class reviews. I've listed a few examples here. These tend to be on new drug classes. Whenever a new drug comes from one manufacturer, there will always be 2 or 3 or 4 other drugs that will arrive very soon after that. Look at the new oral anticoagulants with dabigatran and rivaroxaban and apixaban. So what our drug plans we're looking for is, yes, they want a recommendation on listing, but they'd like to know where each of these drugs should be positioned in the listing of the pharmaceuticals and how they should be used. So we do these therapeutic class reviews. And we also do optimal use projects, and I've listed again some examples here. These tend to be on drugs that are already in the system, that are funded and being used. So we'll look at the evidence. It's kind of like a reassessment. We'll provide some clinical guidance for clinicians, some documents and for patients as well on the drugs. And it really helps provide an appropriate use for the pharmaceuticals that are currently listed. Now moving to our devices, diagnostics, and procedures portfolio. One of our flagship programs here is this rapid response service, and it's a flagship program in that questions can come to us directly from anybody in the public healthcare system in Canada. It's been in place since about 2005, and we've done close to 2,500 of these rapid reviews since then. It is tailored to the individual needs, much more focused than a traditional HTA, the methods we use less rigorous, and it's very fast. It can start from anything from 24 to 48 hours, where somebody needs some information really, really quickly, to up to 3 months, 4 months, depending on, again, the needs. We negotiate some of those timelines with them. In many cases, the evidence we find is that there is no evidence, but even that is helpful in some of their decision making. We also do more traditional HTA and optimal use on devices. Again, some recent examples in devices, the robotic surgery units. We've done some work on MRIs, on infusion pumps, et cetera, et cetera. Laboratory diagnostics is an area that we've started to move into with a passion. We know there is a lot of inappropriate use, a lot of waste in laboratory diagnostics, and our plans, our ministries have asked us to do more work on that. Again, we've done some work on INR testing, on cardiac troponin, and a number of other important diagnostic tests. Disinvestment or reassessment, another area that we have started to focus on. And lots of other things that we do in addition to just the assessments we do on drugs and devices, the methods guidance documents. One of our most downloaded products on our website every time we look is our guidelines for the economic evaluation of health technologies. So the methods we use for an economic assessment. We've done about 3 versions of that in our 25 years, and we're about to update them again this year. Indirect treatment comparisons. We do lots of education and training across the country. Knowledge mobilization. We're such a large country. Our head office is in Ottawa, in the central part of Canada, but I have a liaison officer in every province. They are my eyes and my ears on the ground, working very closely with the hospitals, the health authorities, and the ministry staff. And we coordinate work and broker work of others. In the future, lots of areas that we are looking at, concerned about, that our policymakers are concerned about. Orphan drugs. David referred to some of the drugs that they're looking at having ICERs of 150, 160,000. Well, with orphan drugs, we're looking at ICERs of $2 million and $9 million. We actually said yes to a recent drug for cystic fibrosis that had an ICER of $2 million. But we also said the manufacturer needs to look very closely and reduce their price significantly. A drug that costs about $300,000 per patient per year. Biosimilars starting to come to our country too as the patents expire? How do we review them? There's a lot of interest from the policymakers on introducing biosimilars, but there's a lot of questions about the assessment of them, both regulatory and HTA. Personalized medicine and companion diagnostics. Therapeutic vaccines. These are vaccines that actually treat disease as opposed to preventing disease. None are on the market at present, but there are about 40 or so drugs that are under various aspects of clinical trials. Adaptive pathways for both licensing and some of the methods we're using, Bayesian methods, etc. And the growth of HTA, the importance of HTA globally and in our country. So I thought I would leave you with a few lessons that I've learned in my 5 years at CADTH and my many years being in healthcare. 6 real important lessons. So first off, I strongly believe you have to focus on the customer. It's not about the report. And a statement we're starting to use more: help make your healthcare system smarter with good evidence. Creating these principles for success that you and your staff can rally around. Ours, which are relevance, timeliness, quality, and impact. Changing policy and behavior takes time. Again, I referred back to many of my researchers get very frustrated when nobody does anything with the great reports that we do. And I just look at them and I say, take a deep breath or go home and have a glass of wine, and have 2 very important factors here. Be patient. Policy change, behavior change takes time. So be patient, it will happen. But also be persistent. Keep going back to them. 4th, really truly important, and again, NICE has this model as well. You really do need to involve stakeholders in a transparent and a meaningful way. That's patient groups, that's clinical groups, and that's industry. We have an industry liaison forum which has 2 working groups, one on our processes, one on the science we use. We have a patient liaison forum with most of the key patient groups in our country, and we work very closely with clinicians. An area that we want to work more on, and we've started to focus on, is the primary care docs, the family physicians, the ones who end up having to use a lot of this evidence without knowing a lot about where the assessment came from. Harmonize your scientific methods and processes, and this is tough, because we all get researchers that are trained in various universities and schools across the world. They all come in and say, my method is the best method, this is what we used. You need to harmonize that. And in my case, I appointed this chief scientist, and she fights those battles. She's the one that looks at harmonizing things internally. And go beyond the report. Again, it isn't just about that report or even the recommendation. Knowledge mobilization, implementation support. So go beyond the report. If you are interested in more information about our organization, we have entered the social media quite well. We do have a Twitter account. We are active in YouTube. We do a number of things on YouTube. In our conference, our symposium, by the way, is in about 10 days. And we encourage people to tweet throughout the conference. So it's not ignorant that people are actually playing with their iPad through the presentations. We actually encourage them to tweet. So with that, I thank you very much, and I do hope that in about 20 years' time, somebody from NECA will be standing up as a keynote speaker at a conference somewhere, because I do know that you have a very bright future ahead for yourself. Thank you very much.